following video has all dialogue and subtitles turned off to minimize story spoilers. Gameplay shown is from an early build of the Edge of Fate and is subject to change. Hello everyone and welcome back to the show where I do in fact have time to explain. Today we're going over the stats revamp, armor and weapon changes, and just like a lot of gameplay related things. Stats are getting a pretty significant overhaul in the Edge of Fate, in addition to getting renamed very basic terms. The 6 stats will now be Super, Class, Grenade, Melee, Weapon, and Health. No more ambiguity there, although it does lose a little bit of the charm that the old terms had. Not only that, but stats now go up to 200, and each point matters individually, as small as a gain those single points might be. There are no more stat tiers dictating when you get a bump in effectiveness. So, what does each stat do? Health boosts the health you gain when you pick up an orb of power and reduces flinch from incoming fire. I wouldn't exactly call this what resilience turned into, but it's still a pretty defensively focused stat. Between health 101 and 200, you gained increased shield health and recharge rate, so it's kind of recovery-like. This is one of a couple stats that I didn't really get to mess around with that much in my playtesting, and I chose not to test too much because I thought the other stats were a bit more interesting to review, but it wouldn't surprise me to see people stacking this to be more of a PvP menace if the math happens to work. Melee does what you would assume that it does. It reduces your melee cooldown. Not only that though, it increases the amount of melee energy you gain from all sources, meaning your melee stat can scale with other perks that give melee energy. I'm thinking like a pugilist or something like that. I did not get to test this to as heavy of a degree that I wanted to in my play session, but there is something that we'll get to that could give more insight into how potent this effect might be. From 101 to 200, you get a straight up melee damage increase everywhere in the game. At 200, it's 30% in PvE and 20% in PvP, and I'm pretty sure this scales linearly, much like all the other stats, so each point will give you, 0.3% of a boost in PvE and 0.2% in PvP. Grenade is the same as Melee, reduces cooldown and scales other grenade energy sources. From 101 to 200, your grenade damage also increases. At 200, this is a 65% increase in PvE and 20% in PvP, scaling linearly. Next, we have Super, which from 0 to 100 increases the amount of super energy from all sources, and from 101 to 200 increases the damage of your super. So this is something that I actually got to do a little bit of testing on to see how much of an increase in energy you're getting at a couple of stages. I think I tested 0 super, 100 super, and 200 super. Although now that I think about it, 100 and 200 super are effectively the same when it comes to the amount of super energy that you're gaining, because that caps at 100. So really good job, me. I should have tested 50. That being said, the difference when picking up orbs is actually staggering. And the difference in gameplay between high and low super stat is staggering. When running with very little super stat, there would occasionally be times where I don't even feel like I got my super in a solo ops activity. It takes a notably longer amount of time to get a super at low super stat, whereas with a higher stat, it did feel somewhat frequent. This is part of why build crafting and your build crafting decisions matter so much more now, but let's finish talking about the stats and then I'll get into that. Class does the same thing as Melee and Grenade from 0 to 100. From 101 to 200, it gives you a scaling overshield whenever you use your class ability. Finally, a very new stat, Weapons. From 0 to 100, this increases your reload handling and damage versus minor and major combatants, up to 15% on the damage side. From 101 to 200, you have a chance to gain more ammo from ammo bricks, and you also increase your weapon damage against bosses and other guardians. This also scaled linearly, where at 200 of the weapon stat, you would be doing 10% more heavy weapon damage in PvE and 6% in PvE. They call it heavy weapon. They didn't call it power weapon. They call it heavy weapon. 6% in PvE. And primary and special are doing 15% in PvE, also 6% in PvP. I am very interested to see how this stat ends up playing out. I'm also interested to see how future damage tests are going to go. I'm going to propose that damage tests do not build over 100 of this stat, and then we just add in the increase after the fact. But I relinquished my place in that fight a long time ago. I don't think it's even up to me anymore. Armor also has Masterworking, where you can increase the Masterwork bonus 5 times. Every time you Masterwork, you will gain 1 stat in the 3 lowest numbered stats on the armor piece. At higher tiers of armor, it might just be tier 5, I'm not sure. Not only do you get 1 additional energy going from 10 to 11 energy, but there's also another mod slot to fine-tune your stats. You can choose to add 5 of a stat, which costs 5 of another stat, or you can choose to increase your lower stats by 1 more point each. In total, with this bonus stat slot and Masterworking, you can add 40 extra stats onto your armor. Although most of those will be buffing stats that you're not actively building into, but everything helps, as we're about to discuss. So let's get back to that whole build crafting actually matters now statement from earlier. When an armor piece drops, it will drop with a high amount of its main stat and a medium amount of a secondary stat. But there are only so many stat combinations that will be in the game when Edge of Fate drops, and I'm not sure how often Bungie will introduce new combinations. For example, Grenadier armor drops with high grenade, medium super, and a low amount of a third random stat. All other stats are set to 0. Paragon drops with high super, medium melee, and low random. I say high, medium, low, it's 30, 25, 20. As a result of these stat changes, I don't think there are really any dead stats anymore. Everything is kind of important, and sacrifices will now need to be made when build crafting. If you want high grenade and melee capabilities, some other stat is gonna suffer. If you want high health and weapons, other stats are gonna suffer. No longer can we just stack resilience, recovery, and either discipline or strength and just call it a day. Mobility and intellect are gone or reformulated to have value, and you're not going to be able to have everything all of the time, at least at the lower tiers of gear. I do think that this makes the space a little more interesting, though. You gotta make some decisions. You gotta make some real armor builds, not the same 2 variants for every single setup across every single class. To some people, this is going to seem incredibly daunting, but to others, way more engaging. But let's talk about why you don't need to panic about farming new armor just yet. Recently, at least on my streams, I've been telling people to delete tons of old armor as we go into the Edge of Fate, because prior to this preview event, I was of the mind that this armor transition would be similar to the transition of Armor 1.0 to 2.0. You could still use Armor 1.0, but it was outclassed so quickly that it became outdated almost immediately. I was surprised at the event to see that my current day Artifice armor was not only not outclassed immediately, but actually still kinda good. Your current day armor is being converted pretty generously when it comes to total stats, and there's going to be a lot of people out there who continue to use that armor for quite a while into the Edge of Fate. I think once maybe the more hardcore players start seeing tier 4, tier 5, maybe more average players start to see tier 3, that's when the conversion is going to start to happen. Total stats will start to increase on individual armor pieces, eclipsing the older armor, but it will happen much slower than the previous armor update. That being said, I do think people should be clearing old unused armor out of their vaults in preparation for the expansion, but I've also been saying to keep a few armor sets that you are actively using to hang on to in this transition period. Your old armor will be relevant for much longer than I anticipated, so I apologize for earlier advice that I was giving. I jumped the gun a little bit there, but I still think you should clear some stuff out. On top of that, we have set bonuses of varying quality. There are 2-piece and 4-piece set bonuses so that you can still use an exotic, although I wouldn't be opposed to a 5-piece set bonus, with the 5-piece bonus being some kind of exotic quality bonus. You can mix and match 2-piece set bonuses if you would like as well. I found myself on Bushido armor most of the time. Bushido 2-piece is where my final blows with freshly drawn or reloaded weapons heal me, And the 4-piece is where bow, shoddy, or sword final blows reduce incoming damage for a short time, and damaging enemies with those weapons extends the effect. I just found the 2-piece bonus to be globally useful during the event to kind of minimize my downtime. Aeon Renewal's 2-piece is where rockets and GL kills give you speed booster after sprinting, while the 4-piece will give you speed booster when you sprint at critical health or after being suspended or slowed by stasis, assuming you have Force Converter active, which is the 2-piece bonus. This is incredibly conditional when you first hear it, but there are a decent amount of strand and stasis enemies in the Edge of Fate, so maybe it'll be better than I anticipate. Texex 2-piece bonus is where you deal significantly more kinetic damage to shields, overshields, vehicles, constructs. The vehicle and construct cope continues. We will see what's up there. The 4-piece bonus is pretty nice, though. Defeating powerful combatants or breaking a shield with kinetic damage does a disorienting kinetic shockwave. The last discipline set, also PvP, maybe more of a generic PvP set, 2-piece gets you improved reload speed on primary weapon ammos when you get final blows with primary ammo weapons. That's pretty decent overall. And 4-piece picking up an Orb of Power gives special ammo progress. Also pretty decent overall. Oh yeah, special ammo progress. What does that mean? In the Edge of Fate, you will now have 2 ammo meters under your weapons. As you fill these meters by getting weapon kills, you will be progressing towards your next ammo brick of that type, guaranteed to drop when the meter is full. You can read more about this information in this wonderful help menu that Bungie has implemented on weapons. Hit W on the keyboard or whatever it says on console, and you will be greeted with some basic information about how things work. Finally, some information nicely organized to explain some basics to people. It explains weapon elements, tiers, perks, mods, infusing, masterworking, cosmetics, granted all very briefly, but I wasn't expecting high-level breakdowns of this information in a quick help menu. It's also there to explain a bunch of armor stuff too. So, what's going on with weapons now and weapon tiers and all that kind of stuff? Honestly, it's pretty easy to explain. Basically, the higher the tier of the weapon, the higher the odds that you either get more perk options on the weapon, more enhanced perks on the weapon, maybe even both. This continues up to enhanced origin traits, barrels, magazines for like tier 4 all the way up to tier 5, which completely enhances everything on the weapon and gives it a special tier 5 ornament and cosmetic kill effect. So like whenever you kill something, you get a little animation or whatever that says like, I'm using a tier 5 weapon. Now, I have been informed that this tier 5 treatment is just the treatment that all tier 5s get. Not in this expansion, but this expansion and the next one and all future ones. And the feedback has been given that players would probably like to have unique tier 5 weapon ornaments on a per season basis. I would be surprised if people did not want that, so don't say I never did nothing for you. Tier 5s also get enhanced weapon mods. Right now, I would say a fully crafted, fully enhanced weapon nowadays is around a tier 2, tier 3, something like that. Probably closer to tier 3. Those weapons will be more than plenty for the majority of the game. I guess we should speak about crafting though. Here's what I heard about crafting. That's it. I didn't hear anything about crafting for the Edge of Fate besides one exotic weapon. I'm going into this expansion with the mind that there will be none weapon crafting. I've had some discussions about any potential future plans for it, but there wasn't anything really that concrete. So I'm going to wait for Bungie to make official statements on weapon crafting instead of trying to put words in their mouth. But I would be going into the Edge of Fate assuming that there is no crafting. Speaking of weapons though, we do have some new weapon archetypes. The rocket-assisted pulse rifle, the spread shot hand cannon, and the longbow, which is kind of like if they turned Wish Ender into a legendary archetype. The rocket pulse fires 3 bursts of rockets, but the pull of the trigger counts as 1 ammo. So I think this had like 17 or 18 bursts of ammo. And this thing hits pretty hard, but you will tear through your ammo really quickly if you're not paying attention. The spread shot hand cannon is essentially a shotgun in a hand cannon package, And that includes this thing's range. It is very short range. It is a close range hand cannon at best, as the range fall off starts very early. It can also roll with 1-2 punch. That's kind of neat. The longbow, on the other hand, has a slightly longer draw time than an average bow, but it can over-penetrate targets, so you can hit multiple enemies at the same time if they happen to line up. There are new perks and origin traits as well. I didn't do a ton of theory crafting on any of them, save for like 2 of them, so I guess we can talk about those. We got binary orbit. Elemental final blows from the opposite element of the current weapon gives you a damage boost to this weapon. So like this weapon is strand, aka darkness damage, so light weapon kills will boost this one. Impromptu ammunition. Final blows increase ammo meter progress from all sources for a brief duration. I tried this one in the shooting range. Either it wasn't working at all or I was doing something wrong. I'm not sure. Burning Ambition is an incandescent competitor. Sustained damage on a target scorches the target, and dealing damage to a scorched target inflicts scorch. I think I tested this with a pulse rifle with 13 bursts, and on that final burst is when an ignition went off. So that should give you a rough idea of how long it takes to get an ignition, although I don't remember if I was on any sort of solar subclass, fragments, blah, 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 you get it. Blast Distributor. Dealing splash damage grants an improved bonus to the grenade stat. If this works like the melee variant of this perk, it will stack to 3x. Proximity Power is the melee version. When targets are nearby, final blows grant bonus melee stat, and it stacks to 3. Tested this with Hammer Throw. Base Hammer Throw was 334 damage at 97 melee stats, so we have 0 bonus melee damage from our stats. With 1 stack, it's 351, aka a 5% boost in melee damage. With 3 stacks, it's 386, aka a 15% boost. Why did I not try 2 stacks? I don't know, but I'm going to take a wild guess and say that it's a 10% damage boost. Sharp Harvest. 3 light attacks within a short window grants special ammo. That is a sword perk. Built to blast, aim assist, stability, and flinch resistance when you have either Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or a Void Overshield. Thematically interesting, not sure how much it's going to hold up in PvE world. I know I'm missing at least one more perk. There's a perk that boosts your weapon stats based on if it's like light or dark, transient, something. I don't know. For the life of me, I could not find it in any of my footage. Someone else definitely has it. It's not Elemental Capacitor. I think that's what I said in a previous video. It's something different. Moving to origin traits. Exhaustive Research loads a micro rocket into your weapon if you aim at a target for a brief time. I didn't hate this. It's basically free damage. Problem Solver. This is a good one. Sustained damage on a champ, a mini-boss, or a boss exhausts them and gives you weapon handling and reload speed bonuses for a short time. It is Diet Facet of Solitude built into a gun. Vanguard Determination. After using your class ability, final blows with the weapon give you bonus damage resistance. Not too bad either. That is only some of them. I just didn't get clips of every single thing because there was a lot to cover. And I just missed some stuff. So yeah, there's more that I'm sure somebody else has definitely covered. I think that is the end of this video on stats and weapons and armor and tier 5 and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. If you enjoyed this video, check out one of the other 3 videos that I published today about the preview event that I went to for the Edge of Fate. They're linked here. They're linked in the description. Go watch them. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.